I was watching the news today and it was talking about layoffs, about people losing jobs, companies are cutting back and how the hiring is slowing down and how people are having a hard time finding something new. And it kind of dawned on me, this is exactly the reason why I keep talking about not dependent on a paycheck. Because when a job is there, everything feels normal. You get the check. You build your bills around the check. You schedule your life around the check, but you keep assuming that the money is going to keep coming in. But what happens when that check stops? Rent doesn't stop. Grocery doesn't stop. Gas doesn't stop. Insurance doesn't stop. That damn car payment doesn't stop. But life does not pause because your income paused. And if your whole life is like dependent on one paycheck, this video probably gonna hit a little different. What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. Thank y'all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Today I want to talk about layoffs, how there's no new jobs, and why this should be a wake-up call to anybody who's dependent on one source of income. Because when you hear the word layoffs, sometimes people treat it like just like another headline, like a company cut jobs, or a business who restructured, or like the economy is slowing down. But behind those headlines are real people, real bills, real family, real stress, real panic, right? Because losing a job is not like losing a title. It's losing a paycheck that your whole life was built around. And that's what makes it scary. A lot of people aren't just worried about being laid off. They're worried about if they do get laid off, how long it's going to take for them to find something else. And when there's no new jobs and, hiring feels slow, that pressure gets heavy. Now it's not just, I lost my job. Now it becomes, how long can I survive without that paycheck? That's a different stress. And I think a lot of people are closer to that situation than they actually want to admit. Not because they're lazy, and it's not because they don't want to work or they don't care, but because their entire financial life is dependent on one source of income. One job, one check, one employer, one decision from somebody else. And that's a dangerous position to be in. That's why I keep talking about discipline. That's why I keep talking about money. That's why I keep talking about building something outside just working a job. Because a job can pay you, but it doesn't mean they protect you. A job can help you survive, right? But it doesn't mean that it will make you free. A job can give you income, but if the job is your only source of income, then your whole life is exposed. I had to start looking at life differently. And for a long time, I thought that the goal was just to get a better job, better pay with better benefits, more stability. And don't get me wrong, those things matter. A steady paycheck matters, the benefit matters, even retirement matters. A good job can be a blessing. I'm not here telling people not to work. I believe in work. I believe in showing up. I believe in being responsible, but I also believe that your job cannot be your whole entire plan. The moment that job disappears, you'll find out real quick what your real financial foundation looks like. Right? Do you have any savings? Do you have any, do you have low expenses or any investments or any skills you can use? Do you even have a plan? Or were you just hoping that paycheck would always be there? That's a hard question. Because that question is more what people should be asking before an emergency happens. Because most people don't think about the paycheck stopping until that check actually stops. we wait until layoffs happen, or we wait until we get our hours cut, or when this company start downsizing, or until the job market gets tight. Then we panic, right? But discipline is about preparing before life forces you to. That's what I'm learning, y'all. Financial discipline isn't just about looking good when everything goes well. It's about preparing the moment when things are not going well. That's the reason dividend investing became part of my escape plan. Because it's not because, dividends are going to replace my income overnight. And it's not because one dividend payment is going to save me when everything goes wrong. And it's not some magic shortcut, But dividend investing will change the way I think about money. It made me start thinking the questions different things, and how I could build income that's not directly to me, clocking into a job, and how I can make money while I'm still working. How can I create options instead of depending on check forever? And that's something that y'all got to start looking at. Y'all got to start looking at, if I stop working, do my money stop? You want something to grow while you sleep. And I think I touched on this before, y'all, when I mentioned about, a job is meant just to keep you exhausted. You know what a job is? A job is just to keep you overbooked. Again, for the people in the back, the definition of a job is just to keep you overbroke, to be just overbroke, right? Because they pay you enough not to quit, but they pay you enough just to keep coming back. And once you realize that, your whole mindset will change. That's a shift. Because when you get a dividend, even if it's small, it teaches you something. It teaches you that income comes from ownership. It teaches you that money can produce. It teaches you that every dollar can either be spent or gone, or used to build something. And I know some people might say, man, a few dollars in dividend won't help me if I get laid up. And if we're talking about today, I understand that. A few dollars may not save you today, but I'm not only building for today. I'm building for years from now, right? I'm building a habit. I'm building discipline. I'm building a mindset that I can say I cannot only just depend on one paycheck forever. And if we talk about layoff, and it could teach you one thing, that a company can move on without you. The job market can change. Hiring can slow down, right? Positions can disappear. And if you don't have anything built outside of that job, you're vulnerable. That's not fear, ladies and gentlemen. That's reality. And I don't want you to live in fear. I want you to live prepared. Here's a challenge I want to leave you with. Build a layoff defense plan. Not because you're scared, but because you're serious. First, I want you to look at your expenses. What are you paying for now that you don't actually need? Second, look at your emergency fund. Do you have an emergency fund? If the paycheck stopped, how long could you survive? Third, look at your debt. How much of that income is already promised to somebody else? Fourth, look at your investments. Are you building anything that you can pay later? Fifth and lastly, look at your skills. If your job disappeared, what could you do? Those 5 questions matter. Expenses, emergency fund, debt, investment, and skills. Yes, I know it's not flashy, and I know it's not exciting, but that's real protection. And real quick, if you're enjoying these conversations about money, discipline, and life, and you're trying to become financially free, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and it honestly helps push the video through the YouTube algorithm. In the last video, I talked about being tired of getting paid and staying broke, right? This is part of that same conversation, because if payday feels tight while you have a job, just imagine what happens when that paycheck completely disappears. That's why the goal cannot be just to survive until the next paycheck. The goal has to be building something outside of it. $1 at a time. One better decision at a time. One step at a time. That's it for this episode. Fix your mind, fix your money, fix your life. I'll catch y'all in the next one.